Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Sorry it's been a while, life has been a little bit busy at the moment, but we're back and today we're going to be talking all things Tottenham Hotspur, with them currently being in 15th place in the Premier League table after 23 games. They're only on 24 points and it is quite a dismal record that Spurs have at the moment. Nothing seems to be going right and I'm going to be here talking about everything Spurs with my good friend Toby. Tobes, it's just not looking good for Tottenham at the moment. There seems to be issues on the pitch, off the pitch. Fans seem to be really disgruntled. Where do we start? Should we probably start with what's going on the pitch? Not a great recent record. What do you put that down to?
Yeah, not a good recent record. I think could be a bit of an understatement for Spurs at the moment. Since that 4-0 win over City, that massive 4-0 win over City that was so impressive in the last 11 games, they've only picked up 5 points out of their last 33, a record of 1 win, 2 draws, and 8 losses. And I think who those losses have come against as well, I think is a really, really big sort of warning sign for Spurs at the moment. And I think on the pitch, the big issue, and we said it last season, we said it at the start of this season, and we're still saying it now, is that Spurs' defence is not good enough, conceding far too many chances, far too many goals, and that over-reliance on their attack. When that starts to dry up like it has in the last 10 games, Spurs are really being punished and are dropping so many points.
Yeah, but was this arguably predictable? I did think at the beginning of the season that Spurs would have a decent campaign. I thought the fifth place that they got last season, they did well to get that, and I thought that maybe they could kick on a little bit. In these early season predictions, I did have them in my top four. I think I did have them in my top four. So I do think they're a good side on paper when they probably have their best 11 out there, but they just haven't been able to get their best 11 out there because they've been injured. And I think we did kind of say going into it that, they haven't really reinforced that defense in terms of the transfers. I mean, Mickey van der Ven, very patchy injury record. Romero, is prone to getting sent off and now the season has injury issues as well. Same with Destiny Doji, and those are actually the three players of their back five who have been out injured, plus Vicario as well. Can you have a little bit of sympathy with Ange, or do you think it's just really poor planning on Spurs' part?
I 100% could have sympathy for Spurs. I think losing, obviously, their two centre-backs is massive, and they're two really good centre-backs who were at times really impressive last season. But when you see their style of play and the way that their defence sets up, even when they have a full strength defence, they still just concede far too many chances. Last season, we still saw it with Van der Ven and Romero that they were leaking goals. And now with these injuries, yes, the drop in quality is quite significant. But again, I don't think that's really down to bad luck. I think that's probably down to Spurs not reinforcing those areas. I mean, you look at the other sort of top sides, who we consider the top sides at the moment, looking at Arsenal, looking at Liverpool. If Liverpool lost Van Dijk and Konate, you've got Joe Gomez and Gerald Quansah, who I think is obviously a drop, but still good enough to get the job done. I mean, you look at Arsenal, if they lost Gabriel and Saliba, it could be Timber and Calafiori playing as centre-backs alongside each other, which is really good backup. And that's something that Spurs just don't have, and I think maybe it's a little bit naive of them to go into the season without that sufficient defensive cover. And when you combine that with a system that doesn't really protect the defence and maybe relies on somebody like having Van der Ven in there to have that pace, it creates a really difficult environment when you do lose that key player that's so important to that defence, you can see the impact that it has almost instantly.
Yeah, I have found myself scratching my head as well at the summer transfer window because I thought it was okay, it was average. I thought that Dominic Solanke was a great signing, but the lack of defensive reinforcements did have me wondering. I mean, it felt like such an obvious position to recruit a backup for Mickey van der Ven, someone at left back as well, because you got the likes of Jet Spence, who I actually think this season has done really well and has surprised me actually with how well he's done, especially on the left hand side, with Pedro Porro being the only fit defender in that normal back five. And I also think I'm gonna look at Ben Davies. I mean, he's a great servant for the club. I'm sure Spurs fans absolutely love him when he's, coming on in games just to see out a result or playing in, cup fixtures when he's not necessarily being the first choice. But when he's playing week in, week out, that is probably a little bit of an issue, especially in the back four. Even though I do have to give credit for Ant for trying different things, and he did try back three against Everton, worked out horribly wrong. I mean, obviously they were 3-0 down at half time, and that was a really bad result for them, even though they did score 2 goals in that second half. But it just felt like a bit of a no-brainer, and that's why I'm left scratching my head a bit. But the thing is, even though I don't think the transfers were good enough, I don't think anyone could have, first of all, predicted the amount of injuries that Spurs would have. But at the same time, and some of the length of the injuries that they've got as well. I mean, it's constantly changing, but at the time of recording, Spurs have, these are the players that have had injured. They've got 12. They've got Solanke, Vicario, Udogie, Johnson, Werner, Spence, Sarr, Van de Ven, Maddison, Romero, Richarlison, and Odegaard. Would any team in the league be as good as they are on their best day with those players missing? Absolutely not. But I guess the question is, should they be this bad? Could they at least be in the top half of the table? Could it be 10th, 9th, just maybe finding a way to get points? Or is it a little bit of... I kind of think that maybe Spurs should be doing a little bit better, but I also still have the sympathy. It's a really tough one, and I'm not sure exactly where I sit. I still don't think that this is completely on Ange. I think that's fair to say.
No, I agree with you. I think it's why it's such a difficult one to assess, and why that question of do Spurs replace Ange, is it just down to Daniel Levy? There's so many questions that I feel are really difficult to answer because of their situation. And I do agree. I think the fact that they're in 15th, that is such a huge drop. And maybe if they were in 8th or 9th, which I would still consider a drop for Spurs, given the size of the club and the quality that they do have. I had them in 4th in my predictions at the start of the season as well. I thought maybe over the summer they would change their style of play a little bit, maybe sort of shore things up compared to last season and see where those weaknesses were last season. But I think it's been the combination of maybe that naivety from Ange of not changing his system a little bit and having a better defensive back line, combined with those injuries. I think it's got to be both really in combination. And watching them at the moment is so frustrating. It doesn't feel like it's the individual players coming in as replacements for those injuries that are making the mistakes. And it's sort of seeing how that defensive unit and that midfield unit is set up that's causing chances to be let go by them is maybe where the issue is a little bit more. But that's where it's difficult as well, because their replacement players, are they just maybe not doing as Ange wants them to do as much? And maybe if it was Van de Ven, Romero, Udogie and Vicario in there, that they would look better as a unit because they are sort of more intelligent players, more players used to Ange's system, players who understand that system a lot more. Whereas when you've got Gray and Dragozan and Jed Spence, who aren't bad players at all, even if they are played slightly out of position, like Archie Gray, I think is fantastic talent, but for me certainly isn't a centre-back. It's maybe just the wrong players in the wrong system in combination with missing the best players for that system. So it's so difficult when it's potentially a combination of a number of things, and when it is a combination of a number of things, it's so difficult for the players and the manager to fix things and completely change that form around.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just a lot of bad luck as well. And I know Spurs fans won't want to hear that, because you kind of think to yourself, well, what are we meant to do with the stroke of bad luck? How can we go about fixing that? And the truth is you probably can't. I do look at the squad composition, and I think that the first team that Spurs have is quite good. I think in terms of what can they achieve, I think, if everything goes really well and they all play to the best abilities, Spurs can definitely be a top 4 side. But the fact that if it doesn't go well, if they're not available and not fit, then the fact that they're 15th, that is a little bit worrying. But I do think of some of the replacements. I mean, if we just took the back 5, for example, from the last game they played, which was Leicester. I mean, if you think about the fact that you obviously Pedro Porro at right back, but then the fact that you've got Dragozan, Ben Davies at left centre back, and then Archie Gray, a young defensive midfielder, at left back, and he's only playing because the player who should have been the backup to the left back, Jed Spence, is out injured as well. It also feels like the ages of these players are just complete opposite ends of the spectrum. It feels like Spurs have too many players between the ages of 21 and under, and that's something which I thought was quite interesting, because You've got players like Archie Gray, Bergvall in midfield. You've got Wilson Odobert, who hasn't really played a lot of this season because he's been out injured. But you've got Mikey Moore. You've got so many talented young players. But have you potentially got too many of too young an age that can really impact the squad at this moment? Because no doubt we can all see them and be like, you know what, they're actually really talented players. But there's a difference between looking at a player and going, they're talented, and then thinking to yourself, actually, we need someone who's going to do the job now, even if they're what 23, 24, they could do a job and perform at a decent level. And I just don't think that the squad composition and in terms of the ages, I don't feel like it's really a lot of thought has gone into how is the squad going to develop and how are they all going to play with each other in 2, 3, 4 years. I think it's more about, okay, we've got our players who are going to get us 3 points now, but then we've also got the next group of players, and it just feels like the thinking isn't quite joined up. And who I put that down to, I'm not quite sure. I think it's probably a bit of everyone.
Yeah, and that's a really disappointing thing for Spurs this season. I think for the club in the long term is these young players like particularly Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall, who I've been really, really impressed with at times. I think obviously Bergvall playing in a midfield that seems to be changing week in, week out. Archie Gray playing a number of positions, none of which are his best position in midfield. When we have these players at clubs, you expect them to sort of have maybe a bit more of a gradual progress through. I think probably the plan for them this season was to play them in the Europa League, play them in the cup competitions, let them gradually come into that Spurs side, playing more and more games as the seasons go on, where at the moment they've both been thrown into the deep end into a struggling Spurs side. Can't be doing their confidence any good, can't really be doing that sort of gradual learning of Ange's system very good either for these young players who are obviously long-term signings. That it's not just affecting Spurs at the moment, but I think it's probably going to be affecting these players' performances over the next few seasons as well, which is really difficult. And that's not anyone's fault. That's not Ange's fault for playing them or Spurs' fault for the way they're playing at all. It is again just down to that injury record that they've had to be thrown in probably a lot sooner and a lot deeper than they would have hoped maybe when they were first signed.
Yeah, I remember watching that Everton away game, and I watched that one in particular because I just had a feeling that Everton, with new manager David Moyes back at the helm, that they were just going to do something. I thought Everton were really unlucky against Aston Villa and probably deserved to get a point. I don't think they did enough to get all three, but I thought a ravaged Spurs side through injury, I thought this could be a really good game for Everton, and it did turn out to be that way. And I remember watching, I think it was maybe the third goal in that game, which was the Archie Gray own goal, and I just felt sorry for him because I thought to myself, do you know what? For 90% of his game during that match, I thought he did really, really well. And obviously, the own goal does, put a little bit of an asterisk on his performance. He does probably look on that with regret. But at times, Dominic Calvert-Lewin just physically bullied him. But what else do you expect from an 18-year-old midfielder who's playing at centre-back in the right of a back three, something he's probably not ever done before? At least a full-back, maybe he can hide and he can, he's got to face a winger one-on-one. But the fact that, he had Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and then if he failed to beat Dominic Calvert-Lewin in the 1v1, then he's got Iliman Ndiaye running him out as well. So it's a very difficult task. But at the point we're looking at Spurs, not just Archie Gray, I'm using him as an example, but the other young players in Spurs are going, yeah, they've had a good game for 90%, but then they cost you an error which leads to goal and leads to you losing. But then you've got to still, be like, okay, it's a young kid, you've got to give him the benefit of doubt. You're going to start losing these kids and their confidence is going to be knocked down massively. And then fans will remember, I'm not sure how I feel about Archie Gray. He made that mistake in that one game. And yes, it would be a part of Spurs fans will go, okay, yeah, but he was out of position in a ravaged side. But it's human nature. You will remember it because he did, something bad. He cost you the game. You will remember that, even though as much as you're trying to give him leeway forward as well. So I do think that it's such a difficult time, and I've never seen the side who are in more desperate need of signings or just an international break, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and that's the thing with, as you said, in that Everton game, in that first half, there were times when Everton were just absolutely waltzing through Spurs. It was so easy for them to pick up the ball and run. Like Ndiaye, I think, was fantastic, and on his goal, when he picked up that ball, and Spurs' defence was just all over the place. It was so easy for him to run it through. I think when he had the ball at the halfway line, he knew, keep running forward and then go left, because there were absolutely no Spurs defenders out in their right-hand side on Ndiaye's left, and it was so easy for him to run through. And with Spurs' defence at the moment, do you think it is finally now time for Ange to change his system, even if it is only in the short term, but to really try and bolster that defence? Because at the moment, going forward, they're still going forward well enough, and they're still probably scoring enough goals. And I think if they reduce that attacking output, they would still be fine, probably still score enough goals. But to change that pendulum a little bit and just have a bit more defensive solidity, sit back a little bit more, because at the moment their defensive numbers are so bad. In the Prem overall this season, they're 14th for goals conceded, as in they've conceded the 7th most goals, and the same for expected goals is exactly the same position as well. And for their opponents against them, they have the lowest distance per shot against them in the league. So teams are finding it easy to get chances, and as well as XG per shot as well. They're joint second highest for XG shot per against. So teams are creating chances against them, but also creating really high quality chances against them. And do you think with Ange's system, if he were to change that and to try and bolster that defence a little bit more, as opposed to going all out attack as it always seems to be, would they be any better off, or is it purely as well down to the injuries, as we were saying?
So I think there's a couple of things there. I think first of all, I would say that he has changed it in the last couple of weeks. I do think though that it hasn't worked, which is why it's not, people aren't giving him enough credit for changing it, because with Ange, everyone talks about his system and the way he likes to play. But he has changed it in the Clash group. Like I said, he went to a back three against Everton. His line isn't as high as it used to be. It is a little bit deeper now because it has to be because of the quality of the players that he has, and not having Mickey van de Ven with his recovery pace and Vicario with his ability to be a sweeper keeper. So he has changed it, but it's not working. So now Ange is in a lose-lose position, because his system, which he's like, I'm going to stick to no matter what, he's changed it. And so people are like, so you're not as welded to that system anymore. But now that it's not working, people are saying, well, you've changed it, so maybe you should have stuck with what you're doing originally. So he's actually in a lose-lose position, and not only because of the defence. I think when you mentioned about the high XG of the chances that people are opposition players are getting against Spurs, I think it's because you've got to look at the whole team as well. Because the midfield is so ravaged, because the attack is so ravaged, their pressing from the front isn't as good, and the midfield being weaker means that teams can just get through them a lot easier. Because if I look at the injury list again that I've got in front of me, you got Sarr, who did, I think, play in the Leicester game, but I think he was injured, and I think you could tell from his bad performance. I think Bentancur just came back, but I think Yves Bissouma's just back. But you're playing Maddison out on the left-hand side rather than the middle, and because you've got issues in the forward line as well, Kulusevski's not in the middle, he's out on the right-hand side, and some of the players that you are playing in the midfield, the likes of Bergvall, they're still young players, still learning their game, and when you've got two experienced players possibly next to you, but who are out of position in, if you think about it on as if you're playing FIFA or FC 25 as it's called now, you just have no green chemistry links between any of the positions. And so I think the whole team is struggling at the moment. Plus the fact that they've got no confidence. And plus the fact they're probably all petrified of picking up an injury, because they know if they go down, there's no one behind them. I mean, Spurs can even put out a full bench against Leicester, even with, a bench full of kids essentially. So I think that even though I believe Ange has changed it a little bit in the last couple of weeks, no matter what he does, it's not going to fix itself until they get some players back. That's my honest opinion. And that's probably why I would still stick with Ange, even though I think that he is becoming a little bit prickly in the media. He is, probably not helping himself as of late. But I think any manager would be frustrated in the position that he is in at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the system changing and it not working. And I think that is the thing when things start to go wrong with the system and tweaks are made. That a system that has been as well drilled as Ange's is, and a system that I think is actually really liked by a lot of the Spurs squad by what it sounds like in the media. Changing that and changing the way that players play, the way that they perceive the match, is so difficult, because the amount that they would have trained in that system, it's going to be second nature to them at this point. I think with dropping the high line, that was something that they could do that maybe wouldn't affect the way players are playing too much. Clearly hasn't worked. And I think a really, really key point of their system that is really struggling at the moment is when they have that ball in that, just as it's about getting into the middle third, when they're trying to play it through the pressing opposition forwards, try and play it through those lines. that is something that is really, really key to Ange's system. Something that they're still doing that I think maybe that they shouldn't, but something that I think is that second nature to them, where we see Sarr or Basuma spin on the half-turn play and then they start to move it really quickly. We saw this with El Kanous's goal for Leicester against Spurs and for Anthony Gordon's for Newcastle against Spurs. Two really similar goals where Spurs lost the ball really deep, trying to play it out from the back, and it was an easy goal for both of them to score. And as you said, it is a lose-lose. They either try and change that, which maybe they are, but the players at times are still doing it because it's what they have in their subconscious, what they've trained for their last few seasons on, or you keep it and it still almost goes wrong. So like you said, it is a really difficult one, and you can't change too much too quickly to try and turn this around, because otherwise, as we said, it's a lot of work gone down the drain. So what can they do? What can they actually do in the short term over the next few weeks to try and save their season, essentially?
Yeah, so just before I move on to what they're going to do to save the season, I think in terms of their playing as well, you make the great point about the progression through the phases of the pitch. You also got to think about with no Dominic Solanke and no Richarlison, they got no number 9 to hit with the long ball, even if they wanted to try and switch it up. Plus the fact that they've lost all the pace on the wide areas as well. Heung-min Son, who is fit, isn't in the best form of his life at the moment. He's having a bit of a downturn. And the fact that you've got no one on the bench to relieve him means he's playing so many more minutes than he should do. And the fact that you're playing him down the middle sometimes as well makes it even harder. Then on the right-hand side, you've got Dejan Kulusevski, who, as we've learned so far this season, is probably his best position is in the midfield in that number 10 position. And he's having to go back outside to the right-hand side, where, as we've learned, he's probably not the best at, but he can do a job, but he's not the quickest either. So there's just missing players everywhere. Romero is quite actually underrated in his progressive passes, I think. And Mickey van de Ven and Destiny Doji can, really drive with the ball from defence as well. So they're missing everything everywhere. For me, I don't think, even though there's been a lot of talk about Ange Postecoglou, that changing a manager now would lead to any difference, because what's going to happen between now and the end of the season is probably Spurs are going to continue to get injuries, because anytime a player comes back, they're going to be overplayed instantly because of the amount of other players already injured. And I tweeted it out, and I think Spurs' league campaign is done. I can't believe I'm saying this, but just don't get relegated. Maybe finish as high up in the team, maybe finish like 11, 12 or something, and try your best. But just go for the cups. Just go for the cups, because that is the only way that Spurs are going to get any sort of shining hope from this season, in my opinion. I mean, it's going to be tough, but I think we can all look at that Carabao Cup semi-final next midweek and we're going, that could be absolutely massive for Spurs, because they're 1-0 up at the moment. Yes, they have to go up against Liverpool, who, if you're talking about teams in good form at the moment, one of the best teams in the league based on the league table, one of the best teams in Europe based on the Champions League table. That's going to be tough. But if Spurs can somehow win that tie, go to the final, then I think everyone would just give him a breather until then and just give him a bit of an easy ride. And I think that's what Spurs and Ange need right now. And yeah, for me, it's absolutely the Cups. Do you see the same way?
Yeah, I completely agree. They almost need to have a flip to the season that most people do, where maybe they should be resting players in the league, which is a really difficult one because obviously the quality in the Premier League is so high. But with the fact that they probably will have nothing to play for, yeah, they've got to be going for those cups. And in the cups this season, there hasn't really been much of an issue for Spurs. It has really just been their Premier League form. I mean, we look at them in the Europa League. They've only lost one game. They're sitting in the 6th, and they're probably going to get auto qualification with their final game this week. FA Cup, obviously only had one game against Tamworth, but they won it. They're into the 4th round. And the League Cup, as we said, has some great results in there, beating City, beating Liverpool in that first leg. And if they can get that second leg result, that's huge. And if they can get to a final, again, that's not been the issue with Spurs. It's been those one-off games. We've seen them with some fantastic results against some of the big sides this season. Looking at City in the league and in the League Cup, that big win against Aston Villa, and they could do it in a final. They really, really could. And I think that would be a big thing for the club, is to get a trophy. I think especially when it comes to the summer, when players sign for teams and teams go and approach players, the feel of the club that they are committed to winning trophies is still a big thing that plays on the mind. It's not just for tweets and for memes and things like that. It is a big thing to try and lure some of those top players in. And I think maybe, as some of the sort of conjecture at the moment in the media, that if they were to get rid of Ange before that sort of semi-final or before that League Cup final potentially, I think again shows a bit of weakness that we saw when they sacked Mourinho before the League Cup final. They went on to lose that game, and there you have a manager, a very successful manager, a manager known for being exceptional in finals especially. Sacking him maybe to try and save a bit of league form as opposed to winning a trophy probably did them a lot of harm, and I think it would do them a lot of harm to do that again.
I do think though that Mourinho and Ange are completely different though in terms of their personalities. Mourinho was making noises that he wasn't happy. He wanted reinforcements and transfers. He wanted the club to spend some more money, and eventually I think the higher ups and Daniel Levy went, you know what? If he wins a trophy, he's going to get even more time, more power, and he's not the right man for us. Whereas I think Ange, to this day, and maybe a little bit foolishly, is continuously defending the higher-ups. He's constantly, no, this is exactly the squad I want. These are the players I want. Yes, I would like more players, but if you don't, that's okay. I'll work with what I have. He's almost being too nice to the people who are employing him, because I think maybe I don't know, maybe it's his character. Maybe he thinks he can't do better. I'm not sure what it is, but he's taking on all the flack, all the blame. That I think they just go, yeah, do you know what, we'll keep Ange. Because there is a chance in the next few weeks with the Europa League game against Elfsborg, with their Carabao Cup semi-final against Liverpool, with the FA Cup fourth round against Villa, they could, not qualify in the top 8 of the Europa League. They could be knocked out of the Carabao Cup and knocked out of the FA Cup. And all of a sudden you go from, okay, maybe if they get one of these right, they could have a bit of a couple and things go well, to all of a sudden it is all about the league. And then you look, oh, we're 15th. And that's even worse, because at least the cups are giving them a little bit of hope at the moment. I really do think that, and we are seeing it, like I said, in these couple of interviews recently, that Ange is becoming a little bit more prickly, but he needs to have it directed a little bit. He needs to play a little bit more of a game. Maybe he's just too honest, but I really do think that he's not helping himself by saying that this is exactly how I want it. I mean, let's look across London. Mikel Arteta, everyone was hammering him for saying, he's happy with the squad. And as soon as he comes out and says, I want reinforcements, everyone goes, yes, finally, our manager is saying they want reinforcements. Now let's put it on the people who are in charge of recruitment to go get him the players. And I think that he does need players. How on earth is Kinski the only player that has come in, and a goalkeeper? They need some more outfield players. They need a defender, maybe midfielder, maybe forward. Yes, get the right profiles. But as we've seen in this transfer window so far, there are players out there who are on the move, who are willing to, take a risk and a bit of a gamble. And I think that there are definitely players who can improve the Spurs starting 11 right now, even when everyone's fit, and definitely improve them based on the players that they're putting out week in, week out. So I'm a bit disappointed. But again, it just seems like they're not willing to go that extra mile to back the manager and see if it works out. And I'm a little bit disappointed, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think part of Ange saying that this is the squad that he wants as well is probably protecting his players, I think, a lot as well. They're obviously going to be so low on confidence. I can imagine he's that sort of manager that will not want their players to be getting any flack. And I think when they're in the position that they are, and if Ange says, yeah, coming out, this isn't the squad I want, the players aren't good enough, I don't think that's really going to do them any good. I'm sure that he actually does think he needs some reinforcements. I'm sure he is pressing for that. And as you said, I think maybe him saying it in the media isn't really going to influence maybe the higher-ups decision to put a little bit more money in. It's not going to do the players any good. And recently, they have spent a pretty decent amount over the last few seasons anyway. They've had some big signings. Looking at Van de Ven, looking at Porro, looking at Solanke and Brennan Johnson, they have made some pretty high-value transfers already. Not that should stop them from spending any more when they are in a situation like this. But yeah, maybe as well in this January transfer window, it's just not an ideal time for them to sign players. And maybe they are looking of giving Ange the end of the season, give him the cups, maybe seeing that the league, as you said, is basically done. If they're sort of sitting in 15th and mid-table is likely what it's going to be, that they would probably just get rid of him at the end of the season if there are no changes in form and no sort of further progression in any of the cups that they're in. I could certainly see that if they don't win that League Cup, they don't get particularly far in the Europa League, and the Prem form stays as it is, I think it's probably going to be a case of resetting in the summer, potentially.
Well, I don't know if you've seen the trend on Twitter, mate, the one where everyone's talking about the top 10 transfers of a club and how much money they spent, and they're trying to rank them and see how well they did. Because I wrote it down because I thought it was quite interesting. So I don't have the actual financial values, but I think we all know roughly what they are somewhere. But I've got the top 10 players Spurs have signed. And they've got, first you've got Dominic Solanke, second Tanguy and Ndombele, third Richarlison, 4 Brennan Johnson, 5 Christian Romero, 6 James Maddison, 7 Davinson Sanchez, 8 Archie Gray, 9 Pedro Porro, and 10 Mickey van de Ven. 8 of Spurs' most expensive signings of all time are in this current Tottenham side. Obviously, not all of them are fit at the moment, but it does go to show that they have spent money. But I don't know if you saw the Deloitte Football Money League report for 23-24. Spurs actually only spend 42% of their £220 million revenue on wages, considering they make more commercial revenue than Chelsea and Arsenal, who are about 50 to 60%. And it did get me thinking, they have money. They have the money to spend. Like you said, just because they spend a lot of money doesn't mean you shouldn't spend more if you have it and it is a sustainable manner. So they can go out and spend. And I am still bemused because I still do think, why not accelerate the move that you're probably going to make in the summer? Why not back the manager who is back in the higher ups and defending you so well and resolutely? Why not give that guy a couple extra quid compared to the one who maybe you can understand who's throwing under the bus saying you aren't good enough? But because Ange is just being the shield for absolutely everything, and I think other people at the club do have to take accountability, and at the moment they're not.
Yeah, I just think if I was the Tottenham owner, and even if I was looking at the squad saying it needs to be done, I would not risk giving a manager in his position many more funds, because realistically, as I said, I think if he doesn't win the League Cup, he's going to be gone in the summer. I'm a big fan of recruiting new managers in the summer. I think it's way better for clubs. It gives them more time to pick out candidates, more time to really find someone who is the right fit for the club, and more time for the manager, I think, to get that pre-season and to get to sort of go in straight with a transfer window. Maybe, I suppose, at the last few games of the season, it can help a new manager to sort of set up for the next season. But for me, if I was the Spurs owner at the moment and they don't win the League Cup, even if they do, I think Spurs Ange has got to get, obviously, at least till the semi-final second leg. And I think maybe if he didn't have that, if they a few slightly worse results in the Europa League, I think he would be gone. I mean, looking at that form, 5 points out of the last 33, that is absolutely abysmal form. So poor. That, in most jobs, especially any other top 6 club, gets you sacked. I think he's lucky to still be there.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this then, mate, because surely if a club has a vision and a profile of how they want to go about playing their football, even if they decide to sack one manager, surely if they recruit a player to try and help the current manager, they'll go, right, because of our joint vision and where we want to go and how we want to play, the player that we signed this January, even if we do end up sacking the manager, will still end up being a good player for the new manager. Surely you've got that to take into account. So is that not a reason to still spend the money anyway?
I think in the modern game, I really don't think so. I think so much of signings these days is less about the quality of the player and more about how the player fits into the style of play. I think that's such a huge thing. I mean, it feels like there's so many players who, like for example with Manchester City, in terms of Guardiola's style of play, there are so many good players in the world who just wouldn't really fit into that style of play. And especially at the moment with Spurs and maybe what they need, you're looking at players who are going to be at least 30, 40 million. And I think that's a big risk to give to somebody. And if they get in a manager who plays really differently to Ange, for example, I don't know any of the other managers on the market at the moment, but for say if Amorim hadn't gone into United and instead went into Spurs in the summer, it's a completely different change of system. And if they signed signed a right winger, like a pure right winger, who maybe doesn't fit into a sort of a 3-4-3, where they either need to be a sort of inside forward or a wing back, and you've got a new winger who's just cost you 50-60 million, that then is a huge potential in terms of wasting money. So yeah, it's so frustrating because it's so clear that Spurs need some players, but it's just not going to happen at the moment with the big question marks, really.
Yeah, I can understand that in terms of with like Amorim and the wing backs, but I think if you go out there and you get a manager who can play a back four, then I mean, I would look at Liverpool, and obviously maybe this is a bad example because they're doing really well, and maybe you need an example of a team who aren't doing so well. But if you think about the players like Cody Gakpo, Ryan Gravenberch, who the previous manager signed, thought they were really good players, who were kind of on the peripheral of the squad, and you may be thinking, oh, maybe they could be upgraded. Now with the new manager, new lease of life, they've done really, really well. So I think it can probably go both ways, so I think that'll be fair enough on that. So are you saying then that you don't think Ange will be there at the end of the season? And if you do think they should change manager, who would you employ instead?
I think he should be given the rest of the season. I don't think much will change if they do change it, especially now, and he certainly should be given that League Cup semi-final and final if they get there. Even if they lose every Prem game, I think from now until the final, if they get there, he's still got to play it. So yeah, I think it'll be till the end of the season. In terms of managers coming in, I'm honestly not too sure. I'm trying to think of if any managers sort of get relegated. Maybe a Kieran McKenna. You could see maybe if they go down to the Championship, that would be quite a Spurs managerial appointment. It could be quite a good one. It could also be quite a bad one. That could be one that could really go both ways. In terms of other available managers, I can't really think of too many off the top of my head, to be honest. Are there any names that you've heard floating about that you like the sound of if they were to replace Ange? Actually, first of all, do you think Ange will go? Do you think he should go? And yeah, who would that be if so?
I really, really don't know if he should stay or go at the moment, because the thing is, after just seeing what happened with Erik ten Hag with Man United, I'm really, really uncertain, because say it doesn't go well, you either back him in the transfer window in the summer and then it doesn't go well, and then you go, well, we wasted all that money, wasted all the players. Look at Ruben Amorim, he doesn't fancy, or doesn't seem like he fancies a lot of the new players that were signed under Erik ten Hag. Say you don't back him and it still goes badly, then you go, well, look, what were you expecting? It's a bit like Pochettino. You didn't back him, the team declined. What do you expect? Of course the manager's going to be sacked. The only way it works out if it goes really, really well, and at this moment I am not certain if it will go well next season. So they need to make a decision. They're either sticking or twisting, and I really don't know. I mean, in an ideal world, if you're a Spurs fan, they win the League Cup, maybe they go far in the FA Cup or Europa League, do really well. Everyone comes back to fitness, the players, and then you go have a decent run towards the end of the season. And you go, do you know what? It was just injuries. It was one-off, bad luck. Let's go again this summer. Because if he doesn't win a trophy this year, after he's come out and said everything about winning a trophy in the second year, although the injuries are probably an extenuating circumstance, and it's such a difficult decision to make. I would always urge on the side of keeping a manager, but I do agree. I would have to see how the games go. I would have to see how many of the players come back and how they play when they come back, because they might be not injured anymore, but they might not be fit and back to peak form. So I'm gonna have to see. If you were to sack Ange, who do you get in? I mean, the obvious one is Andoni Iraola at Bournemouth, but with how badly Spurs are doing and how well Bournemouth are doing, he's probably looking even higher than Spurs at the moment. So I don't actually think you could go for him, especially if Bournemouth get Europe. I think there's a decent shout. I like Kieran McKenna. I mean, you could probably even look at Michael Carrick in the Championship with Middlesbrough, because, he was a former Tottenham player as well. I like Thomas Frank. I think for Spurs, the way that Brentford are playing at the moment with their amazing attacking football, terrible defending, and their home record being so good, I think that's one at the moment where Spurs are and where Brentford are, the jump wouldn't be too great. The expectation would already be at rock bottom. And I think he would go in there, fresh release of life, probably a bit more positivity, and he could get them playing some really, really good football. He's the one that I would go for at the moment if things don't improve. But yeah, I just doesn't look good anywhere, if we're being honest.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not sure if Tottenham should sack Ange, to be honest, because I think, like you said, next season if they have a full squad, and again, like we said at the end of last season, if he just changes things a little bit and solidifies that defence and less high risk, high reward football and a little bit more control in games, then I think next season they could be fine with him. He could do a good job like we saw at the start of last season. They were really, really playing well and they were fantastic to watch. But I think, like you said, if you're Tottenham and there's a possibility of getting Iraola or Frank, and if I had a free vacancy position, I would put a lot of money on the table to get either of those. Massive, massive fans of both of them. I would just be concerned that they maybe wouldn't want to make the move, depending on the position that Tottenham are at the end of the season. Maybe on looking at sort of previous managers who have gone there, not done too well. Looking at other similar cases, maybe like a Graham Potter going from Brighton to Chelsea, which in terms of where the teams were in the table and the way they were playing wasn't much of a jump, but in terms of the size of the club and that jump up and the pressure that came with it has really sort of set Potter back on his development potentially, and to see that happen to Iraola or Frank, I think would be really, really gutting, because they're two fantastic managers, especially with what they've done with clubs like Bournemouth and Brentford, and yeah, two fantastic sides. So yeah, if Spurs could get them, that would be amazing. Whether they would want to, or it would be too much of a risk for them as well to leave their clubs, not too sure.
I think Tottenham is slightly different though to somewhere like Chelsea. Chelsea, any manager could just get eaten up. I think with Spurs though, it would, for some reason, Iraola especially, it would feel a lot like Pochettino. And so I think it's one where if you wanted to go get him now, you'd have to pay a lot, because he's got everything he wants at Bournemouth. They're giving him everything he wants. He's adored there. And like I said, he could probably aim for a little bit higher than that. I mean, in a couple of years' time, if he continues to do a good job, there's no reason why he can get the Man City job, if we're being honest. That's a level of manager that I think he is performing at the moment and could be even further down the line as well. But if you talk about the players themselves, Tobes, I've got the Tottenham squad in front of me and their expiry for their contracts. I want to know if you would cash in on these players now, if you would let them go on a free, or if you would keep them for the foreseeable future, and in terms of who you think is good enough, because I think there is a question that maybe they're not. You ready?
Yeah, sounds good.
So expiring in 2025, so to be on a free at the end of this season, Timo Werner, who's obviously on loan.
Yeah, I think he's going to be going on a free, isn't he? Yeah, back to Leipzig on a free.
Yeah, his best moment was when he ran past Kyle Walker, who has now since left the league. Sergio Reguilon.
He's a funny one. If they don't sign a backup left back, you could see him maybe getting a 1-year deal, but most likely, I think he'll be let. If they were loaning him out to Manchester United, if they have a fully fit squad, yeah, I think he'll be going on a free too.
Yeah, and no one wanted him, which is never a good sign. What about Ben Davies?
Ben Davies, I think, should go on a free. I think he is way past his best days, but he's a good club servant. Might be one of those players who's a good in sort of the dressing room, good experience, almost like a player coach these days. They may sort of give an extension, which I would understand if that was the case.
Fraser Forster,
I think he's probably going to have to go. They've got Kinski in now. He's probably on a decent wage. Vicario obviously first, Kinski second choice. If they want to keep him again as sort of a player who's been there for a number of years now, maybe a short extension as a third choice. Otherwise, yeah, send him off.
Yeah. We're going to move on then to 2026, expiring next season. I'm not going to include some of the really young players like Mikey Moore and stuff, because I think there's an obvious keep. But I think some of the more experienced players. So 2026, Heung-min Son.
Oof, yeah, as you said, not being in the best form this season, but still does show signs of quality. Would they get much for him? Would many clubs really want to sign him given his age? Try and cash in on him maybe this summer. Saudi League move, that could get some money in. Otherwise, that's a tough one. I don't know. What do you reckon for that one?
I think he probably is past his best, and the 1 year extension was probably, just thank you so much for what you've done. But I do think it's probably one where you move on.
Yeah, maybe try and cash in a bit and sign a young replacement.
Yeah, I'm going to go through some of these a bit quicker. I'm going to group them together. So the others in 2026, there were two: Rodrigo Bentancur and Yves Bissouma.
Yeah, keep both of them. I think Bassuma's a good backup for a 6, and Bentancur's quality. Really like him.
Okay, I would probably sell one just because I think Bentancur's always injured. Bissouma's a bit inconsistent. I think they do need something else in midfield. I'd sell one. I don't know which one, just whichever one an offer comes for. 2027, Christian Romero and Richarlison.
Richarlison looks like he's going to be off, so yeah, cash in. Be able to get a decent bit for him, I think. Romero's got to be a keep, quality.
Yeah, I would agree. I only sell Romero if you get like a massive offer you can't refuse. 2028, you've got Vicario, Spence, and Porro. I'll give you those three first.
Yeah, all keeps, I think.
Yeah, I'm happy with that as well. Then you've got James Maddison, Kulusevski, and Brennan Johnson also in 2028.
Again, all keeps, yeah, all good players.
Yeah, I would agree. I think though that Kulusevski is very close to maybe being too good for Spurs, if he isn't actually already. So I think that's one where maybe we'll have to keep an eye on. In 2029, you've got Lucas Bergwijn, Wilson Odegaard, and Mickey van der Ven.
Yeah, again, all really good players. Odegaard, I'd love to see a little bit more because he was quality when he was at Burnley, but certainly all keeps there.
Yeah, I think Mickey van der Ven, especially given a new contract if you possibly can as well. I think he definitely deserves it. And then 2030, you've got Dominic Solanke, Destiny Adoji, Pape Sarr.
Yeah, I think they're all good keeps. I think Sarr is a squad player. Similar to Basuma, I think that's really highlighted that they could do with a really, really high quality 6. Somebody they should go out and splash out in the summer and maybe keep Sarr, Basuma as sort of those backups, potentially.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And then the last three, Radu Dragusan, Archie Gray, and Kinski, which obviously they signed this January.
Yeah, Dragusan I've not been convinced by at all. Maybe try and sell him and keep the others. I don't know if he hasn't been there long, so maybe that's a bit harsh.
Yeah, so I would keep off Kinski and Archie Gray. I would actually also sell Dragusan. I think that he's a very Romero type player, but on the ball he's not as good as Romero, and while he could probably learn that, I think his technical level is probably not as good. So I would sell him. I don't think he's actually fit Spurs' system whatsoever. But let us know in the comments below, who would you keep or sell for Spurs going forward? And I think that's everything. Is there anything else depressing you want to talk about with Spurs before we move on?
No, I think that's enough slander of Spurs for one day. I'm sure we can fit more in another episode.
Yeah. Also, let us know in the comments below, who would you recruit? I'll quickly just go and say, at the very minimum, they probably need a centre back, a left back, a midfielder of some sort, and a versatile forward. If they could get a left-footed centre back / left back who could play both, that'd be great. But the quality, I'm not quite sure. I think those are the positions that they need most at the moment. Got any quick picks?
No, none off the top of my head because it's so difficult to know what sort of budget Spurs have. For me, I think, some cheap young players as backups in those positions. And for me, they really need to go out and splash out and get a really high quality number 6 in the summer. Should be their key target.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Well, with that done, let's move on then to the quiz. And we've got a new format this week, one which I'm not sure I still understand fully myself. So, Toby, you're going to explain this one.
Yeah, the new quiz format. And it is the squad guesser, we're going to call it. So, what we have done is we've both gone away and we have picked out a starting 11 from a famous game of football. We have numbered these players 1 through to 11. So each player has their own number. What we're going to do is we're going to spin the wheel. It's going to reveal a number, and we are going to reveal a position at a time where the nationality that player is from, if we have picked a club game, or we're going to reveal the club that player plays for if it's an international game. Trying to think of an example. I think we'll probably just play it and go along, and you'll see. So the less players you need to guess the starting 11, where the starting 11 is from, the more points you get. So if you get it on that first player, you get 11 points. going down by one as the players are revealed. And the catch is on this that you can only guess 3 times. So you can keep it rolling, keep spinning, getting more players, but once you've had that third guess, that is done. That's the game done for you. So I reckon we just jump straight into it, and I think as we play it, it'll reveal a little bit more and start to make sense.
Yes. So I think you be the quizmaster first, Toby, and I'll guess. And if I'm doing it wrong, you can let me know.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay, that sounds like a plan. Let's hop straight into it then. Just to let you know, so this is a 4-2-3-1. And your first number was number 9, which is the number 10 for this position. So that's central attacking midfielder, and they are from Spain.
A Spanish number 10. So I'll just talk through my thoughts. This is not my actual answer. But, did you say if it's... No, you said it's a club team, right?
So this will be a club. Yeah, this is a club game, so you're getting the nationality.
So immediately, I'm thinking of Spanish number 10. So I'm thinking like David Silva, Santi Cazorla, Cesc Fabregas potentially. I mean, it could be the Barcelona team, could be a Real Madrid team. But that's where my head's at the moment, and I won't guess just yet. I think it's a little bit too early.
Okay, so yeah, we need the club and the game for this one. So, okay, you've got a good one here. I reckon it's number 1, and they are from the Czech Republic. The goalkeeper.
Okay, so I do. Obviously, I want to put a check. Immediately. So I think it's a Chelsea side of some sort. I'm trying to think if I know any other Czech goalkeepers. Not really. Okay. Okay, Chelsea side of some sort. I'm thinking maybe a Premier League side, a Jose Mourinho side, maybe the one that won the Champions League. That number 10 might be either Fabregas or Pedro, maybe. But I would like to go in, please, Tobes.
Okay. I'm surprised you didn't go for a punt there, but playing it safe. So next one is number 8. So that is your right winger, and they are from the Ivory Coast.
Ivory Coast. Oh, God. This is where I exposed, despite the fact that I did a geography degree, I don't know who plays for which country. So, I think Ivory Coast, was it Solomon Kalou, who was from the Ivory Coast, who played for Chelsea? Oh, I really hope he's from the Ivory Coast. Okay, now I need to think of a game though. Was this, Toby, the Chelsea side that won the Champions League final against who did they play? Bayern Munich.
It certainly is. Absolutely smashed it, mate, with a 9-pointer on the first one. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, so it's the Chelsea 2012 Champions League final. Your number 10, the first player revealed was Juan Mata, Petr Cech in goal, and Solomon Kalou out on the right wing. I'll just run through the team super quick. So yeah, it was Basingwa, David Luiz, Gary Cahill, Ashley Cole, John Obi Mikel and Lampard. Then you've got Kalou, Mata and Ryan Bertrand out on the left wing. The famous little cameo he had for Chelsea there. And Didier Drogba up front as well. So yeah, a big 9 points for you on your first guess. And that's a tough act to follow, I think, on that one.
Yes, so now that I'm thinking about it, I think I might have made yours a little bit too hard.
Oh no.
If it is really hard, I'll make the next week's one really easy for you, mate. But okay, based on okay, sorry in advance. Are you ready?
No. I think the Petr Cech answer was a big one for you there. So I think if there were any others, it could have been tough as well. But we'll see how we go. Yeah, I'm ready. What formation was it?
So this is a club team, and the formation is a 4-2-3-1.
4-2-3-1. Okay, nice.
Okay, are you ready?
I am.
So your first number is number 6, and I've gone for one of the double pivots. He is a Uruguayan.
Ooh, okay. Uruguay. Uruguay midfielders. There's not too many coming to mind. It's obviously Bentancur, but I can't imagine any big games for Juve or Spurs that would maybe be in there. There could be a niche Spurs one in like a North London derby, for example. I don't think he was there for the Spurs Champions League final, but he may have been. Any other Uruguay midfielders before I just roll it? Let's just roll it on. I'm not going to guess.
Okay, so the second number was the 10, and your number 10 is an attacking midfielder who was German.
Okay, German. Oh dear. Right, Uruguayan midfielders playing as like an 8 or a 6. I can't think of any. And German number 10s. Oh, that could be anyone. Ozil, Müller, Havertz. What other German playmakers do we have? That Uruguay midfielder's really thrown me.
You can always roll it.
Yeah, let's roll it. Let's just go on to the next one. I don't have anything.
Okay, the next player is number 11, and so I put number 11 down as the left wing, who was a Gabon international.
Oh, okay. So this is... Oh, come on, man. You should have got that. That was Lucas Torreira way earlier. So it's Arsenal. It's Aubameyang on the left. It's Torreira as the midfielder, and it's Ozil as the cam. Okay. So it's going to be an Arsenal game. Which Arsenal game, though? There was the Europa League final. May have been then. There is also the FA Cup final. And there was a North London derby where Torreira scored. It could be that. I don't think Torreira was there in that FA Cup final. So I might go for the Europa League final. Yeah, let's go for it. Let's go for Arsenal's Europa League final loss to Chelsea.
It is not that game. And this is where I feel like I've been a bit hard, because I'm not sure the game is that memorable, actually.
For God's sake. Okay, that's fine. No, that's fine. I like this. This is good because it's Arsenal, so...
Okay, so the next number is number 3, who is a left back, and they are English.
English left back. Could this be Saka? Could it be English left back? Who else could it be? It can't be Kieran Gibbs. It's way too early. It would have been Monreal. Who was playing that? It could be Saka. It could be Arteta's first game against Bournemouth. Maybe. Oh, I'm trying to think who else could have been left back. Do I waste a guess? Yeah, let's try. Let's try Arteta's first game, which I'm pretty sure was against Bournemouth.
It was. Well done.
Yes, get in. Nice.
I'm so glad you got that, because I was so worried I made it too hard.
Because it's Arsenal, yeah, I feel like you can be a lot more niche with our club team. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. So that's 11, 10, 9, 8 points. So 9-8 after the first round.
Right, yeah, you smashed it. So the team was Bernd Leno in goal, the German Ainsley Maitland-Niles at right back. You had David Luiz and Socrates at centre back with Bukayo Saka left back. You had Lucas Torreira and Granit Xhaka in the double pivot with Mesut Ozil in front. On the left-hand side, you had Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. On the right-hand side, you had Reece Nelson, and up front, you had Alexander Lacazette. So, mate, absolutely smashed it.
Nice, that was fun. I really liked that. I'm looking forward to more of these already.
But there we have it, the first episode of the new quiz format as well. Let us know if you liked it in the comments below, and let us know what your score was as well. And that's it for this week. Everything on Spurs and how to fix Tottenham Hotspur. Doesn't look great at the moment, but I'm sure things will improve. Keep your heads up, Spurs fans. I'm sure they will. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.